that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
Just a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Ben. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Sometimes you get injured doing these. The podcasts are very physically demanding.
Nobody podcasts harder than Justin Bishop.
No,
That's right.
it's you got to work out beforehand. It's a lot of bad on your back. Honestly, I need a better.
Podcasting is the most animated Justin ever is.
That's actually very true. It takes a lot out of me. I am very tired after we do these. It's more energy than I put myself throughout most of the week.
And it's not that you're not efficient, Justin, because you've just optimized your entire body to just use the least amount of energy possible for every task.
Yes.
Yeah, DJ, go Bandit.
It's called Gary. I like to say it's a work smarter, not harder situation.
Right.
But on a podcast, you got to put out those vibes.
It's true. Speaking of podcasts, we're doing one right now.
Oh, shit.
So, well, hello and welcome to Cinema Shock. It's that podcast that we do. It's a podcast we talk about all your favorite genre movies and we tell you everything you fucking want to know about them
and things you might want not care about them.
It's that podcast that we do. It's a podcast we talk about all your favorite genre movies and we tell you everything you fucking want to know about them
and things you might want not care about them.
Exactly. That voice. Oh wait, I'm Gary Horde. He'll tell
I'm
you
Justin Bishop, and Todd's in Asheville this week.
No, I'm right here.
Oh.
I was in Nashville last week.
Oh, he's back.
I'm sorry.
Welcome, writer, comedian, and super trooper, Mr. Todd A. Davis.
We shamed you on the episode, Todd. Don't you worry.
No, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Gary was like, should we shame him on the air? I was like, fuck yeah. I mean, he's not here when he knew about this for weeks.
He bailed last minute.
Yep. Not last minute, like literally 25 minutes before we started recording.
Yeah.
This is what happened last week, DJ. Todd texted us 25 minutes before record time telling us he's in Asheville. Nice. Yeah. Very professional. Guys. Very professional.
I know.
Run of the mill guest.
We got a real special guest.
We got a special guest here today. Yes,
we do.
First time on this show, Mr. DJ Wilson. Welcome to the show, DJ.
Hey, thanks.
Your Zoom. We're recording via Zoom, and your background is Camp Crystal Lake, which is cool. But you're also wearing what appears to be a virtual Hamburglar mask.
Yes.
It's Zorro. Bandit. It's Zorro. Zorro's much cooler.
That's
video bandit.
I didn't even know Zoom had that feature. That's very strange.
Maybe we should just not refer to him by name. Just from now on, that voice is the voice of the video bandit.
Well, guys, this is it. This is our Christmas episode. This episode, if all goes according to plan, is dropping, and hopefully you're listening on Christmas Eve. So Merry Christmas, everybody.
I'm sure you've got nothing else going on, so thank you for spending Christmas Eve with us.
Hey, you know what? Hopefully, if people are being responsible, then they're
around the fireplace. Look at the stockings.
Fire up that Yule log.
Get some chestnuts roasting.
I got your Yule log.
We're going to tell you the final chapter in our story about Shane Black today.
Yeah. So for the last 3 weeks, this is week 4, in true Cinema Shock, in true Psychotronic fashion, we've been discussing movies this month that are Christmas movies, but only just sort of like Christmas movies. They're what we like to call incidental Christmas movies, but very specifically Christmas movies written by Shane Black. So, and it's been a fun ride because we've not just been talking about these movies, but as we've been talking about these movies, we've kind of been talking about the rise and fall, and then hopefully this week the resurgence of Shane Black himself. So it's been really fun. It's been a fun story.
I've had a blast with it.
Not last week. I mean,
well, not last week.
Touch, you're never going to live this down.
2 out of 3. 2 out of 3. And I'm here for the 4th.
Did you watch? You watched the movie last week?
I
though,
did.
Right?
Yeah, I did.
Did you like it?
2 out of 3. 2 out of 3. And I'm here for the 4th.
Did you watch? You watched the movie last week?
I
though,
did.
Right?
Yeah, I did.
Did you like it?
I did. I really enjoyed it.
Well, that would have been a good conversation to have.
I think the only person who's more upset is actually my wife, because it's one of my wife's favorite movies of all time. And
wish she should have come on the show.
She was also with me in Asheville.
What a bummer.
I know. I'm sorry.
Too bad.
Anyway, so
why don't you go away? DJ, is Bethany around? You can just bring her up.
Just get her in here.
Is Kat here now? Can we get her on?
She is working. I always try to say, hey, do you want to come on? Because she ends up watching the movies with me.
Well, let's give a little recap before we get into this week's film. So in his early 20s, Shane Black wrote Lethal Weapon. Of course, he was 22, I think, when he wrote it, about 24, 25 when it was produced. And he immediately became Hollywood's new wonderkind. Like, it was a massive success. Wrote Lethal Weapon, of course. He was 22, I think, when he wrote it, about 24, 25 when it was produced. And he immediately became Hollywood's new wonderkind. Like, it was a massive success, and automatically everyone in Hollywood wanted to be in the Shane Black business. Then his spec script for The Last Boy Scout sold for a then record-breaking $1.75 million. I don't think we were specific enough about this when we talked about this, but The Last Boy Scout spec script sold for $1.75 million. It wasn't the script. It was the spec script. Jeez. And then the same thing happened again a few years later when he broke records once again for The Long Kiss Goodnight, which was also a spec script, which sold for $4 million. And it's sort of the, I guess, failure of that movie kind of killed the whole spec script thing in Hollywood. Like, people stopped spending that kind of money on unfinished scripts. It was kind of because of The Long Kiss Goodnight that happened, which, I mean,
we might not know what a spec script is. It's basically an expanded outline, a treatment with some scripted dialogue. It's very sparse, but to drop that kind of money on what is essentially an idea on a napkin is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And as Gary mentioned last week, the sale of The Long Kiss Goodnight, that script, made him kind of a pariah in Hollywood. You know, he was considered, if anything, he was considered a gifted hack. Like, he was not well liked by a lot of his peers in the industry. Then after that movie bombed, the market for his scripts dried up, and he was already considered a failure. Dude's like barely 30 years old and considered a has-been. And he wouldn't work again for another 9 years after The Long Kiss Goodnight.
Wow.
So at first he's celebrating, right? Like, he buys the Hancock Party House, Hancock Park Party House, I think is what they called it. He buys the Hancock Party House, Hancock Park Party House, I think is what they called it. And he gets right back into the thick of it. And we've seen this process already, like Justin's doing recapping. I mean, he does it after Lethal Weapon 1. Then he gets bummed out on part 2. He disappears. Boy Scout and Last Kiss Goodnight. He's back. Party Animal Black is back. But as he calls it, he didn't see it was the beginning of the end of his lucky streak, because the writing community, they totally hated him.
They shunned him.
Yeah,
they shunned him, and the Academy shunned him. He actually applied for membership in the Academy, and they rejected his application because in order to join the Academy, you have to have what they say you have to have produced 2 works of note.
Yeah, that was it. I mean,
so they didn't consider those
Goodnight hits.
Yeah, dude had already made his credits already at this point. What they say you have to have produced 2 works of note.
Yeah, that was it. I mean,
so they didn't consider those
Goodnight
works of
hits.
note?
Yeah, dude had already made his credits already at this point were Lethal Weapon 1 and 2, The Last Boy Scout, The Last Action Hero, and The Long Kiss Goodnight. And the fact that they shunned him and rejected him wasn't because they didn't think that those were of note. I mean, they still, especially Lethal Weapon, made a lot of money, and Lethal Weapon 2 made a lot of money. They were shunning him.
He
mean,
tells a
essentially.
story where when he tried to join the academy, he sends out the thing, he gets a letter back, and it says that he is unsuitable for membership. That was the quote. They say,
they told him to
back
come
to
back
us when he had more credits.
Yeah.
And he says, quote, I had done Long Kiss Goodnight, Last Action Hero, Lethal Weapon 1 and 2, The Last Boy Scout. And when I realized this wasn't my imagination, this was a deliberate snub. This was we don't want this. Now he's getting blackout. But he's mostly in brooding mode now because how basically Hollywood had fucked up the perception of him again. All he wants to do is be like a good writer, and all he is considered like this lucky dude. Like Justin said, a hack. Now he's like this rich hipster party boy is how people know him. As he puts it in another quote I got here, he says, they didn't understand I was not doing this for the money. I wanted to tell a good story. They saw me in a house full of supermodels, not a house full of books. Nobody knew me.
Wow.
But they did make a comeback of sorts with his directorial debut and the subject of today's episode, which is 2005's Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Harry was a small-time crook.
Oh, boy.
Till he opened the door
Oh, no, we're not ready for your audition.
Just take him. He's ready. You ready, right?
to a really big break.
Quit acting like the good guy. You got your partner killed. You killed him.
He wants to act the part.
You must be gay, Perry. Still gay? Me? No. I just like the name so much. I can't get rid of it.
From Shane Black, the creator of Lethal Weapon,
Do not play detective. Moron. Go home before the bad guys do something bad to you.
comes a mystery.
It's a frame-up. First things first. Do you have the corpse? I got rid of it. You threw it away. Look up idiot in the dictionary. You know what you'll find? A picture of me? No. The definition of the word idiot. Ow!
That starts with a kiss.
Why'd you lie to me?
It was an excuse to stay around you, so I mean, I think... Ow!
Did I just cut off your finger?
Yeah. It's on the floor. Pick it up. Pick it up.
And ends with a bang.
Where is the girl?
You put a live round in that gun.
Oh, yeah. There was like an 8% chance. Who taught you math?
Robert Downey Jr.
What do you think? I'm stupid?
Val Kilmer.
Yes, I think you're stupid.
Kiss, kiss, bang, bang.
The girl.
You put a live round in that gun.
Oh, yeah. There was like an 8% chance. Who taught you math?
Robert Downey Jr.
What do you think? I'm stupid?
Val Kilmer.
Yes, I think you're stupid.
Kiss, kiss, bang, bang.
Now, I say he sort of made a comeback because Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was not a financially successful film. Not a lot of people saw it upon original release, but its critical and creative success helped to spark a sort of nostalgic reappraisal of Black's past work. People sort of looking at Lethal Weapon and The Last Boy Scout and seeing them for how good they really were. And it also helped to launch him into the pantheon of A-list directors, because this would essentially lead to work on franchises like Iron Man and Predator. But it wasn't an easy road to get there. I think you had a quote last episode where he's like, I'm a sensitive guy. I was very sensitive. He's got thin skin, and he took things very personally. And so he thought, I don't have to write action. I just want to write movies. He was known as the action guy, but he wanted to prove that he could do something else. But he had writer's block. So for 3 years, he just couldn't write. And he said, this is a quote from Shane Black. He said, what I needed was to find the fun again, to reacquaint myself with why I decided to write in the first place. It's not supposed to be a burden. And when he couldn't write, he would travel. He went all over the world. He got in a long-term relationship. And those things, he says, kind of supplied him with the insights that he had been missing because he had essentially missed out on his 20s because he hit success so young and so fast that he didn't really get a chance to experience the things that a lot of people his age get to.
And the thing that, was driving him, writing in Hollywood
was trying to see like a child again and realizing why I started in the movies in the first place, to get the excitement back and lose some of the more unsavory lessons I'd been forced to swallow. And with Kiss Kiss, as he's going into this, I think what he's thinking there is he talks a lot about missing the ability to tell stories that felt like the novels that he loved and really have control. I mean, Justin, you talked a lot about, like last week, that coming off of Long Kiss, he had kind of, I think it was there either Last Boy Scout where he was kind of talking about like he just couldn't do this anymore if he wanted to direct. Like he wanted to have a piece of it. And he talks about like things that he loved were like these obscure movies from the 60s, these thrillers that don't have happy endings all the time. Like Hollywood had like forced that on him, which is funny, kind of ironic, I guess, considering the ending of this movie. But he talks about like Vanishing Point, Point Blank from 19 thrillers that don't have happy endings all the time. Like Hollywood had like forced that on him, which is funny, kind of ironic, I guess, considering the ending of this movie. But he talks about like Vanishing Point, Point Blank from 1967, or Night Moves from 75. He talks about like they have like a bittersweetness about them where you don't just feel like poppy happy at the end. And he says, but everything he would ever try to write before would always get shut down with like, this doesn't fit our demographic. Like this is not what the people want to see. He talks about having a great experience with Warner Brothers. Obviously, Hollywood's full of pressure to sanitize everything that you do. And he wanted to make something that felt a little dirty. He talks a lot about, like in interviews, I kind of hit on it last week, but that basically like he said, he calls it the prevalence of the moral majority. It's like you can't get away with anything harsh because some citizens group is going to come down on you and trash it.
Eventually that writer's block that he had was broken by a suggestion from his mentor, James L. Brooks, who James L. Brooks suggested that to him to imagine what it would be like if Jack Nicholson from As Good as It Gets played Jack Nicholson in Chinatown. So he decides he's going to like write a romantic comedy, kind of a romantic version of Chinatown. That kind of like that idea, a light bulb goes off in his head when James L. Brooks said that, and it lights a fire under his ass. He's got this idea to be excited about, something he hasn't had in 3 years. And he starts writing what he thought was going to be a heartfelt romance, the quirky story of two kids in Los Angeles. And he shows it to James L. Brooks, and James L. Brooks likes it at first. He likes what's going on. But as he started writing more, Brooks read it and he goes, I think you really kind of lost a thread here, man. I don't know what you're doing with this, where you're going with this. But Brooks did like the script. He liked some of the stuff in the script. He did say there was some good stuff in here using. So Black is kind of able to go through the script and salvage elements of it that are working. And then Black says, I remember distinctly the moment looking at this big monster laid out before me where I said, fuck it, I have to put a murder in it. And so I put in a gay detective that Val Kilmer eventually played, and I put in a murder, and it became Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. That was he had to still make it a detective story. He started off as a romantic comedy, but man, he loves detective stories, so he still had to like put that element into it.
Yeah, don't fight your natural inclinations. Just go with your strengths.
Well, one of the things he talks about a lot, I mean, we talked about it, obviously. We hit on this. I mean, when he was a kid, this is a guy who's just reading steadily detective novels. That's like his favorite thing, James Bond stuff and like all of that. Talking about this, he says, quote, there aren't that many caper films or private eye films. The leg up that I have, the advantage of which I'm aware of was that I have read thousands of books like this. I have them all at home. There's just like, I have a collection of paperbacks with these Robert McGinnis covers. It's the sort of reading that is occasionally craftsman-like and almost carpenterish. But every once in a while, you pull out a literary plume and you just go, holy shit, that's a gem. And taken as a whole, this sort of sea of private eye literature in all its forms, he calls it from the sort of swinging dick, veiny private eye to the more serious stuff. It encompasses 30 years of literature that I have access to at my house. I have every book. I've collected everything that I could ever find. And so I just pick and choose the little bits and pieces that I have just assembled in my head.
And I think that this film is the closest of any of Black's films that we've talked about to those detective novels. His goal,
I think it's maybe one of the closest ever.
Because Shane Black or otherwise
that is just present in all of those books, and you just don't get that even in the best crime movies.
Yeah, I agree. It just feels like a pulp novel,
Very much.
And his goal for this film was to kind of reinvent the genre by populating the script with more realistic characters and in a modern setting but with kind of the spirit of the 50s and 60s. The script's crime plot actually was borrowed heavily from Brett Halliday's book, bodies are where you find them, which does get a credit in the beginning. Like it's not a based on, but I think it says partially based on in the opening credits. So Black finished the script, which was originally called "You'll Never Die in This Town Again," which is a fucking great name.
It's a great title.
When she's asleep on the bus, leaving Indiana, like she has the Johnny Gossamer book she has is called "You'll Never Die in This Town Again."
Nice. Yeah, I didn't realize that, but that's a great name. It's a great name for a movie or a book. But he finished the script in 2000. He still had problems trying to get people to read it. People didn't want to be in the Shane Black business. They certainly did not want him to direct a film. The guy had never directed a film, and he had already lost a lot of clout in Hollywood by this point. So not only like the idea of getting someone to sign on with him as a director was a far-fetched dream. But it was even hard to get the script in front of people. People didn't care about a new Shane Black script. Even directors that he'd worked with over the years, people that he knew very well, producers that he worked with rather, would say, yeah, it's okay. You know, they'd say it's a little misogynistic for our taste. That was a quote from Shane Black from some things he was told, which I don't necessarily agree with in the final script. But according to Black, one of the studio executives that he showed the script to said, "I'm sorry, we're just not doing period pieces." So he obviously had not read the script, which of course is script. But according to Black, one of the studio executives that he showed the script to said, "I'm sorry, we're just not doing period pieces." So he obviously had not read the script, which of course is not a period piece. But I guess maybe he saw that it was like a film noir and, you know, a detective story and assumed it was like set in the 40s, but it's very much not. But then his old friend Joel Silver decided to help him out, and Silver had his own company at this time, Silver Pictures, and was able to scrape together about $15 million for them to make the movie. So now it was time to cast the film. By the time casting comes around, the film has changed titles. It is now called LAPI, which is a terrible name, honestly. And actors, atrocious. Yeah, it's terrible. It sounds like a terrible CBS TV show, doesn't it?
Or if it was NBC, it'd be set in Chicago.
Actors considered for the lead role included Benicio del Toro, Hugh Grant. I could see either of them. Benicio's a little considered for the lead role included Benicio del Toro, Hugh Grant. I could see either of them. Benicio's a little maybe hard-nosed for the hairy character. Hugh Grant's a little, I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to put it past him. Hugh Grant's a good actor.
I can see both of them more as Gay Perry.
Yeah, Hugh Grant, I could definitely see as Gay Perry. Actually, I could see Benicio as Gay Perry. He would be great. Yeah, he would do that really well. And Johnny Knoxville was heavily in running and almost signed on to the role.
Well, I think Knoxville was slated to be the lead role for a comic book adaptation called Hawaiian Dick, which I wonder if this ended up taking the place of, but they both his role in this fell through, and then the project Hawaiian Dick fell through.
Just not meant to be for Mr. Knoxville.
Yeah.
And Robert Downey Jr. learned about the film from his then girlfriend, later wife, Susan Levine, who was Silver's. She was kind of Joel's. Gothica was kind of finishing up, and they, you know, Downey was still kind of hanging around the office because his fiance worked there. And Black and Silver just kind of looked at each other and they're like, why don't get Robert in here to read for this? They just needed somebody to like read lines. He starts reading lines and they're like, wait a second, like this is working. This is really good. Like he's really good at this. Like it's natural. And so they actually brought him in for an official audition after that. And they just loved the way that he handled Black's dialogue. It was, as Black put it, he said, it was like I typed them right into his mouth. Like it was unlike what anyone else had done with Black's dialogue in the past.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much one of those like serendipity, I guess. Interesting that Downey was there, and yeah, like you said, Justin. I mean, to hear him talk about it was just like, he's here. Do you want to read this real quick? And then they would hear him. And they're like, well, shit. It's like we don't have to do anything else.
Well, wasn't Goth leading up to Iron Man? So like Gothica, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yeah. Well, actually, while we're talking about that, let's do a little side journey into where Robert Downey Jr. was at this time.
Yeah.
So we all know Downey now. He's one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. I mean, he's like you said, he's Iron Man. He was for 2 or 3 years in a row the highest paid actor in Hollywood.
Right.
But in 2005, his stock was pretty low. In the 80s and 90s, he was a star. He had appeared in films like Less Than Zero and Soap Dish. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor for the lead role in 1992's Chaplin, which is
amazing.
Incredible performance.
Yeah.
He appeared in Shortcuts. He was in Natural Born Killers. He was in Richard III. Like, the guy was a rising star in Hollywood until he hit some legal troubles and some personal troubles. So from about 1996 to 2001, he was arrested numerous times on drug charges, everything from possession of just pot to cocaine and heroin. Times on drug charges, everything from possession of just pot to cocaine and heroin. He went through drug treatment programs several times with a little success.
He actually had a meth lab that later became the workstation for Tony Stark, where he built the Iron Man suit.
That is not true. Gary is making things up. In 1996, in
thoughts
April
and opinions of Gary
1996
Horn do not necessarily reflect the thoughts and opinions of Cinema Shock.
In April of 1996, he was arrested for possession of heroin, cocaine, and an unloaded .357 Magnum while he was speeding down Sunset Boulevard. And then a month later, he's on parole for that charge, and while on parole and while under the influence, he trespassed into a neighbor's home and fell asleep in one of their beds.
In a RoboCop uniform.
Huh?
In a RoboCop uniform.
I was about to say, which is very similar to what happens with the robot at the beginning of this movie. And for that, of the court-ordered drug test and had to spend 6 months in LA County Jail. Then in 1999, he missed another required drug test and was sentenced to a 3-year prison term at the California Substance Abuse Treatment Facility and State Prison. He didn't spend the full 3 years there. He got let out early with time served after about a year. This is 99, 2000. He had a couple other arrests. I mean, he had gotten another role. He was a recurring character in Ally McBeal, actually, which was very popular at the time. And his character was very popular, and he filmed quite a few episodes of that. After a couple more arrests in 2001, he actually got fired from that job because they just could not. I mean, they couldn't trust him. They couldn't trust him. But yes, and it came to a point where he could not get cast in film productions because the productions could not get insurance for their films if Downey was involved. So finally, after his final arrest, he's like, yes, and it came to a point where he could not get cast in film productions because the productions could not get insurance for their films if Downey was involved. So finally, after his final arrest, he's like, he knows that it's likely he's going to either face another stint in prison or he's going to have to go to court-ordered rehab. So he made the decision to get help for himself, to get his shit together.
That's good.
And he was able, so he did. He went into rehab voluntarily, and he got sober. And he was able to return to the big screen after his friend Mel Gibson, actually.
Full circle.
Yeah. Which, we joke a lot about Mel Gibson being like a shitty dude, but this is a really good thing that he did for his friend. Mel Gibson and Downey had been friends since they worked together on Air America years earlier. And Gibson actually paid Downey's insurance bond for the 2003 film, The Singing Detective, which is actually a pretty fun movie.
Nice.
That kind of America years earlier. And Gibson actually paid Downey's insurance bond for the 2003 film, The Singing Detective, which is actually a pretty fun movie.
Nice.
That kind of paved the way for his comeback. That led to his work on Gothica. And even on Gothica, Joel Silver withheld 40% of Downey's salary until production wrapped, just as insurance against his past behavior. So when he was cast in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Downey was still very early in that sort of comeback phase, and thus was pretty cheap. He was inexpensive. He kind of fit well into the film's $15 million budget, which is funny now because he gets paid more than this film's entire budget just for showing up as Iron Man in a movie now.
Yeah, to hear Black talk about it, he says it's like so funny. Some of the stuff I watched is actually from the commentary, which, by the way, just to throw it out there, I don't know how many movie commentaries people like to watch, but the one for this one seems like one of the most fun commentaries out there. But because it's Val, how many movie commentaries people like to watch, but the one for this one seems like one of the most fun commentaries out there. But because it's Val, Black, and Downey. And so they're all three there just talking about it. And like Robert Downey Jr. like farts into the microphone at one point. Kilmer like leaves. And he's like, no, come back. It smells like a baby farted in a pool. It's like they're just having a lot of fun. And like Downey leaves at one point. It's like, I gotta smoke a cigarette. And just like it's just weird. Like Kilmer takes a call at one point and is like, hold on, I got Joaquin Phoenix on the phone. Let me put it up. You know, they're like, it's just a weird, quirky thing.
Just dudes hanging out. Watching a movie they made.
And Val Kilmer anyway, Val Kilmer's a weird dude himself. But yeah, Black talks about that, it's so funny to him because nobody would believe this story now, but he had to fight with the studio. He had
the film. They wanted a bigger name to play. They wanted like a big star to play Gay Perry. Harrison Ford was actually one of the names that the studio was throwing around trying to get, which I don't know, maybe could have been good, but Harrison Ford just doesn't seem to have a sense of humor. So it's hard to say, but
he might. We don't know.
Yeah. But the studio's thinking was that with a bigger name attached to one of these roles, that they could make a big $80 million version of this story and make it like a big, big deal. And this kind of back and forth went on for several months. And Silver and Black just kind of got sick of the conversation and said, let's just make this movie for $15 million the way that we want it. Let's get two really good actors. We've already got one. And let's not worry about making this a big budget extravaganza. And it was actually Susan Levine, who Robert Downey's fiance, who suggested, we've already got one, and let's not worry about making this a big budget extravaganza. And it was actually Susan Levine, who Robert Downey's fiance, who suggested Val Kilmer for the role of Gay Perry because she was a big fan of Real Genius. She thought that he was really funny in Real Genius, even though he had not really played a lot of comedic roles in his career, which is funny because he started his career with like Real Genius and Top Secret, but over the years had become known as a dramatic actor.
And I don't know if she was aware of it at the time, but at the time for Kilmer, he had been trying for more like lighthearted comedic roles,
but nobody wanted to do
more comedy. And he said he couldn't even get cast for that stuff.
Yeah,
like nobody would do it.
Nobody wanted him in those comedic roles. So, but when he came in and auditioned for this, he had just become available. He just finished another movie. He was basically just cast on the spot. When he came in to
nobody would do it.
Nobody wanted him in those comedic roles. So, but when he came in and auditioned for this, he had just become available. He just finished another movie. He was basically just cast on the spot. When he came in to read for this,
and he had met like literally a week before. I think they said he had met Robert Downey Jr. like at a party in Hollywood and had just started talking to him and thought he was like amazing, just like loved hanging out and talking to him. And so it was like it was a big surprise that when he took the role and realized that like he's working with this guy, he was like super happy for it. And he seems like a really cool guy because they said even as a show of support, like he refused to drink the entire production or go out partying or drinking or anything like that during the whole time they filmed this. And so it worked out for Kilmer too. Like it seemed like a really cool moment. And supposedly, I mean, I didn't have time to verify this, but I read a few places that said that Gay Perry's considered.
Yeah, I mean. And the thing is, the studio, they cast Val Kilmer, and the studio's like, wait a second. Now, Val Kilmer has always been kind of notorious for being kind of difficult to work with. So you've got Robert Downey Jr. at this point in his career, and you got Val Kilmer, and the studio's like, wait, these are the two guys that you're putting in this movie for a first-time director? Are you insane? Shane Black says that once they had the guys cast, the studio wasn't too concerned about how they cast the role of the lead actress.
Well, if I could say too, by the way, Justin, just to while I'm thinking about it, just to capitalize on the difficulty of Val Kilmer, based on the stuff I've heard and the interviews I've seen, I bet that he is not as difficult to work with as he is a fascinating lunatic. Yeah. Like he seems like just a really, really weird guy. Like in the commentary stuff I heard, just randomly, Dave, fascinating lunatic. Yeah. Like he seems like just a really, really weird guy. Like in the commentary stuff I heard, just randomly, Downey would be like telling a story and Kilmer would say like, if they made a sequel to this movie, it would be Brokeback Bang Bang. And they're just like very, just like nonchalant. And then everybody's like, all right. And, and they're like, move
Nobody
on.
knows how to
And then
respond.
and then they're like talking about stuff, and he'll just be like, do you know in that scene when we kissed, I was thinking about Kevin Bacon. And like Black would be like, so on this day we like shot something, and we were shooting here. Kilmer will just jump in and he says like, I actually have this one quoted. He's like, it's incidental, not to do with the film, but when you say things like in the day, that day was a Wednesday. If you look it up, it was a Wednesday.
Thanks, Val.
It's just like he's a weird dude.
What a guy.
Yeah.
What a guy.
It was a Wednesday. If you look it up, it was a Wednesday.
Thanks, Val.
It's just like he's a weird dude.
What a guy.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Anyway, sorry. The actress.
Yeah. So the actress ends up being Michelle Monaghan. Michelle Monaghan was a relative unknown at the time. I mean, she's gone on to become a moderate star. She's never been like movie star status, but I think she's incredible. I think Michelle Monaghan is incredible in this movie and in general. I mean, everything I've seen her in, but I think she is
absolutely
one of the gems of this movie. I know people
True
talk
detective.
about, well, yeah.
She's awesome.
Well, I know people talk about Kilmer and Downey in this movie, as they should, because they're both incredible, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But I think Michelle Monaghan, she does, and she does this thing, I think, where she comes across in certain moments like just super, like incredibly sexy. Like you can see why Robert Downey Jr. is, or why Harry is totally smitten with her, 20 years later.
From like her in the car, like trying to chase somebody down with a gun or something. But my stuff is like I keep thinking about like the scene at the bar where he runs into her,
Yes.
and they just have dialogue going back and forth. And you're like, man, that's
Native
not easy
American
to do.
Joe
Robert
Pesci.
Downey Jr. is RDJ is like something special when it comes to like spouting off that shit. And like she's there like firing back and forth.
Yeah,
with him.
she
It's
keeps
just
up
fun.
with him. And her character is, I mean, it could come off as cliche because like she's written as a cliche purposely, I think. That kind of Hollywood cliche of this girl from the Midwest who came to Hollywood to make it big. But I think she says she's 34 in the film. I think Monaghan was considerably younger than that at the time of filming. But all she has to show for it is like this dumb beer commercial with a bear who says, "What do I know? I suck the heads off fish."
It's Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, which is Lawrence Fishburne, by the way, which is really I could not find the story of how Lawrence Fishburne got that gig.
Neither.
But I could not find the story of how Lawrence Fishburne got that gig.
Neither.
But maybe he was just friends with some people involved and they needed somebody to do the bear. So he's like, oh, yeah,
Well, he's friends with Joel Silver.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. This would have been, you're right. This would have been after The Matrix. So
yeah.
I guess it probably was Joel Silver.
Yeah, they in the commentary that just like got thrown out. Like it was just like,
oh yeah, that's Lawrence Fishburne.
Hey, that's Lawrence Fishburne.
That's a big deal. So unsurprisingly, the principal photography for this movie took place in Los Angeles, believe it or not. The opening party was actually filmed at Shane Black's own mansion. That was his mansion where that party is.
That's cool.
Before shooting began, the title was changed to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang because, as Black says, he says it described how the plot was half romantic comedy and half murder mystery. Now, the title Kiss Kiss Bang Bang comes from a Pauline Kael book, actually. It's a collection of Pauline Kael reviews because she kind of said that those 4 words sort of encompass movies as a whole. Like every movie is about these things. Bang comes from a Pauline Kael book, actually. It's a collection of Pauline Kael reviews because she kind of said that those 4 words sort of encompass movies as a whole. Like every movie is about these things, and she actually took the title from an Italian James Bond poster.
Yeah, I was about to say that's where I actually heard that Val Kilmer suggested it to Shane Black, that there was a song originally written for Thunderball, the James Bond movie, and it was called Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and it was recorded by Shirley Bassey and then Dionne Warwick and
Shirley
John
Bassey
Barry
did the Thunderball.
Well, so the story is that the composer John Barry had chosen the title when he read a magazine article about that's what people in Italy called Bond movies.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
And then as they were putting out the
for a
song,
James Bond movie,
the producers got cold feet on calling it that or having that song. So they used Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in Thunderball, but only an instrumental version. But yeah, anyway, that was that became like a slang description of James Bond spy movies.
Some of the music is very reminiscent.
Well, the music on this is done by John Ottman, but who did The Long Kiss Goodnight as well, I believe. So wanting to achieve the look of a modern version, like a neo-noir, a modern film noir, Shane Black actually showed films like Harper with Paul Newman or Point Blank with Lee Marvin, kind of those 60s versions of film noirs, to his cinematographer, Michael Barrett, and his production designer, Aaron Osborne. So he wanted that film noir look, but he wanted that modern film noir look. And Osborne actually drew also heavy inspiration from the detective book covers by illustrator Robert McGinnis, who they actually brought in to draw the covers for those Johnny Gossamer books that appear in the film.
Very cool.
Did you also notice that Pazuzu was at the party at the beginning?
Pazuzu from the X books that appear in the film.
Very cool.
Did you also notice that Pazuzu was at the party at the beginning?
Pazuzu from The Exorcist?
Yes.
The demon?
Yes.
Oh, really?
What?
He's
Where
in the
was
middle
he?
of the film, and they don't even talk about
Like
it.
a
but it's
statue?
there's a
Or
statue.
the
Oh,
actual
you're
Pazuzu?
right. Yeah, you're right. I
There's
remember
a statue
that.
of Pazuzu.
Do you think that Shane Black just owns a statue of Pazuzu and that's in his mansion?
I bet
It is
so.
possible. Yeah.
Because if I had Shane Black money, I would own one.
Yeah, it's like it's
Where
like
is
a
it?
red light all around it. It's like
I
it's
actually
like
remember
when he
pointing
first
that
walks
out.
into the party. There's a statue of Pazuzu, which is super weird. I thought,
But
but
it's very strange.
It's very strange.
but yeah, that's a cool party. Also, Richard Greco. Do you know who I'm talking about? Richard Greco.
Yeah.
21 Jump Street?
Yeah, he's at the party too, and apparently had more of a role, but he got cut out. They ended up cutting a lot of it, but he's still there. Like you can still see him. I just saw that in the commentary thing because when I used to work at a video rental store, there was an older black gentleman with like a jerry curl who used to come in every weekend and ask if we had new Richard Greco movies.
Wow, did he think there were a lot of them being produced?
Churning those
There were
out.
more than you'd think, but it was he loved Richard Greco, and I'm like, who is Richard Greco? And he's like, oh, you don't know Richard Greco? He's like the greatest action star. Like you gotta check this out. Like
That is a hot take.
he was real into Richard Greco. I've never forgotten that. Anyway,
Wow.
So Kiss Kiss Bang Bang opened in very limited release on October 21st, 2005. The studio didn't seem to have a whole lot of faith in the film. And despite the fact that it received really great reviews from critics. I mean, the film was very well liked by critics. And as a result of the positive reviews, the distribution company did increase the number of theaters it was in every weekend. And it ended up staying in theaters until early January. So it was out for a while.
Times that we saw movies together, and as soon as we left the theater, we both contemplated going right back in to see it.
What was the other one?
The other one was Across the Universe.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, I don't like that movie.
Yeah.
You don't like that movie?
No, it does not hold up. No.
Oh,
My New York City apartment is featured in Across the Universe.
Is it really?
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Like the inside or the outside?
The interior was shot in the next door brownstone.
Interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So there were a lot of critics who liked this movie, but I have a sneaking suspicion that there are some online, what we'll call armchair critics who might have felt differently about this, Gary. Can you confirm that?
that is true, Justin. As we find out every week, there are always some folks that really get bent out of shape about a film, and it really just sounds like somebody needs a nap. Nap.
So DJ, this is the section of the show where Gary reads a bunch of
1-star
reviews from folks on the internet who might not like these movies that we're talking about.
Wow. Let's hear it.
Because there's
Let's hear it.
always somebody.
There's always somebody.
No
Let's
matter
hear it.
how this movie could have a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and there's some guy out there sitting in his mom's basement who was bitching about it.
This is from Phil. He says the title should have read Mist Yin Yang.
Well, that doesn't even make sense.
What does that even mean?
I almost threw up when I saw this movie. This movie was awful. I should have known better when I read the title, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I should have known this movie would be a real stinker. I wish I could get my money back. I want better for my money. Enough already. I'm throwing this piece of movie doo-doo in the garbage pail.
He does not give it one single reason why he doesn't like the movie.
No, he just did not.
But he does.
This movie would be a real stinker. I wish I could get my money back. I want better for my money. Enough already. I'm throwing this piece of movie doo-doo in the garbage pail.
He does not give it one single reason why he doesn't like the movie.
No, he did not.
But he does. I mean, a movie almost making you throw up seems like an overreaction.
It does. It does.
Hold on.
Unless you're watching like
cooking.
Unless you're watching Martyrs or like a Serbian film or something.
Where Divine eats the dog shit. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
or the talking asshole. Yeah.
Yeah. Singing
asshole. Yeah.
Bird is the word.
Yeah. Bird.
Gary, you got some more?
Sure. Unfortunately, nobody went really into deep discussion on like there wasn't like in a good like 2-paragraph rant or anything. So I've got a few here.
That's all right.
This one's from Fred. For the love of God, don't do it. What can I say? But everything you know is wrong. How many paid shills are on this board raving about this box office flop? The movie that tries to be too snarky for its own good. Do yourself a big favor and don't buy it. Do something better with your time, like go help blind kids. Anything is better than sitting through this unfunny film noir wannabe piece of dreck. Not a fan.
I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't want to go volunteer to help blind kids, but I'm not sure how the two things are mutually exclusive.
I don't buy this one. The trailer is way better than the film. Too long, too predictable, too crude to be clever. Watch any other holiday themed movie and skip this one. I just don't know that person watched it. I don't know. Ginkgo Girl wrote awful, and she wrote in all caps. This movie is terrible. It is not funny. It is not clever. It is vulgar, meaning that it lacks sophistication and good taste. We watched a few minutes, stopped it, and contacted customer support for a refund. Don't waste your time. I would have given it 0 stars if that was even an option.
I literally didn't watch it.
Yeah. And then White Dove says, full of crappy sex words and words. It was crappy sex words.
Crappy. What's a crappy sex word? What does that even mean?
That needs to go on the poster.
Crappy.
That definitely should have been.
Full of crappy sex words.
Definitely needs to be on the poster.
Oh,
Crappy
man.
sex
I don't know. I wish I knew exactly. I guess I assume the F-bomb is probably fuck. Is that the word?
I mean, that's a word.
Incoming transmission.
Hey, folks, it's your old friend, Mr. Todd A. Davis from the Cinema Shock podcast, here to ask, are you tired of seeing a random episode of Star Trek and thinking, I wonder where this falls into the overall prime timeline? I know I am. That's why I'm bringing you a new podcast covering the entire Star Trek franchise in chronological order. It's called Computer Resume Podcast. Each week, join me and a rotating panel of my family and friends as we boldly talk Trek like no one has before. If there's a joke to be made, we'll make it. And if there's a poignant discussion to be had, well, we'll try our best. We'll also have interviews, contests, take listener questions, and other things currently deemed classified by Section 31. Those shifty motherfuckers. So join us every week starting in January of 2021 for the Computer Resume Podcast, free wherever you get your podcasts. And be the first to hit us up online now at Computer Resume on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Or email us directly at computerresumepodcast@gmail.com. The Computer Resume Podcast, part of the Slice of Fried Gold Network. Hashtag LLAP. We'll see you soon.
Anyway, the film only earned about $4.2 million in the U.S., about $11.5 million internationally, for a total gross of just over $15.7 million. So it barely earned back its budget. And Robert Downey Jr. was disappointed in the film's box office take. He thought this was going to be like kind of a comeback because he back its budget. And Robert Downey Jr. was disappointed in the film's box office take. He thought this was going to be like kind of a comeback because he still calls the film one of the best he's ever worked on.
I mean, to this day, the dude says it's like his favorite movie of his own. He called it his calling card to playing Tony Stark / Iron Man. One of the quotes I found from him said, it's hard for me to watch Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and not get nostalgic about it. It's not perfect, but in some ways, I think it's the best thing I've ever done. I don't know why, but I do know why, RDJ. It's because, my best guess is because that it led to Iron Man, because Jon Favreau saw it, and then on Iron Man he made like $500,000 salary, and then that was basically the last time he'd ever worked for less than $10 million on a film.
Wow!
So
Wow.
that's my guess.
So, and of course, that, while one of the people who was a big fan of this movie and a big fan of Downey's work on it was Jon Favreau. So when it was time to cast Tony Stark, he gave him a call. So all of this talk that we've had on these past 4 episodes now about Shane Black's paychecks, it's more than just kind of talk about the business of Hollywood. It's kind of an imperative part of Shane Black's story, because those big paychecks, especially on Last Boy Scout and Long Kiss Goodnight, they kind of cast a big shadow over the films themselves, many of which at the time of their release were kind of derided by critics as being the kind of films that were sort of signaling the downfall of Hollywood, like these no substance, big budget action blockbusters. So why was this dude who's making these movies bringing home $4 million for a screenplay when more serious writers were, barely making a living? But then after the Kiss Kiss Bang Bang came out, a lot of money, a lot of critics started reevaluating Black's work and seeing it for like how good it really was. Because during the 80s and 90s, I think that like there were very few, if any, other screenwriters who had a distinct voice like he was. Screenwriters who weren't also directing their own movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a big. The overarch of this story is, staying true to yourself. Because I mean, we discussed it earlier in this episode that it wasn't fun for him anymore.
Right.
And it wasn't until he started penning a story that was something he was interested in, something he would want to read, a movie he would want to watch, that people got on board. And, between, actors and, in front of and behind the camera.
Well, plus, like on the previous movies or the previous screenplays of his that were produced, he had this great dialogue that he was writing, but a lot of that like Shane Black voice would get, it wouldn't necessarily come through because of some of the directors that were adapting it, like a Rennie Harlan or even a Tony Scott. Both, Tony Scott in particular, I think has made some really good movies, but his movies are very flashy, so a lot of times like the stuff that Black is writing, which is very character driven, gets lost in that. And also sometimes it's because of the actors who were cast, like not in the case of necessarily Lethal Weapon, because I think, Mel Gibson and Danny Glover are both outstanding, but like Bruce Willis, he does that sort of mumbly, like partially hungover thing that Bruce Willis does.
Yeah. I think going back through these things, is he not like the most out of place in a Shane Black script? Like,
yeah, I mean, I feel like he is, because I don't know. I mean, some of it gets lost in like the not giving a shit Bruce Willis-ness of his performance, if that makes sense. And we haven't talked about the last action hero, but Shane Black's dialogue coming out of Arnold Schwarzenegger's mouth is not quite the same as when you put it in front of Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
Because like with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I think this is the first time we've seen a Shane Black screenplay make it to the big screen exactly like Shane Black wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Well, you remember when you read that part about like from The Last Boy Scout back to that one again, where like it's like literally in the script it's saying like describing the scene of this house and like this would be a great place to have sex in. Like that's what
that
it
was
says
Lethal
in the
Weapon.
script.
Yeah, but yeah.
Or Lethal Weapon. But it's like this movie feels like all of those things he would have like just tacked on in a script that everybody else would have brushed over actually also ended up in the movie.
Yeah.
Or Lethal Weapon. But it's like this movie feels like all of those things he would have like just tacked on in a script that everybody else would have brushed over actually also ended up in the movie, sort of.
Well, yeah, because this is a pretty meta movie, with the whole narration, the whole like Robert Downey Jr. being aware that he's kind of a shitty narrator,
the
and
frames
going
slowing
down,
the
frames, and then going, oh wait, let's back up. But it plays with the idea of it being a movie. It's very clever in that way.
It really is. I love it.
Very clever in that way. And because it's doing that, and because this was a place where, at this point in his career, Black's been in Hollywood for a couple of decades, and like this is his home. This is what the world that he lives in. And I kind of love that he's mashing up the tropes of those those detective novels that he loves so much with the idea of a movie that he lives in. And I kind of love that he's mashing up the tropes of those detective novels that he loves so much with the idea of a movie about Hollywood, because it is about Hollywood. It's about two people, Harmony and Harry, coming to Hollywood to be somebody else. That's what people that's the Hollywood dream, right? For Harmony, it's to be an actress. For Harry, it's to, he goes to Hollywood pretending to be an actor who's pretending to be a PI. It's all about the artificiality of that town.
Yeah, I love the alliteration of the names. The Harmony and Harry, and then you got the rhyming of Harry and Perry.
Yeah,
it's just so great. It
is great.
A little thing, but I kept thinking about that. I was like, that's so fun.
Well, they really nailed down to, like, between Harry and Perry, the dialogue bits, like the same stuff you loved from, like, Danny Glover and Mel Gibson. Dialogue bits, like the same stuff you loved from, like, Danny Glover and Mel Gibson and Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans and all of that. Gina Davis and Sam Jackson. Like, this one really just even flows even faster. Like, like these two just like bouncing off each other. It's fantastic.
Well, I think that's because of the actors. I mean, I think that's because it's Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer who are just so good at this.
Right. Which feels so much like Nice Guys to me.
Yeah, which I watched last night. I rewatched Nice Guys last night, and I think that's. I mean, this is my favorite Shane Black movie.
Yeah.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but Nice Guys just feels like everything Shane Black ever wanted to do in a movie.
I honestly, I did not know until just the other day that Kiss Kiss was his first time in the director's chair.
Yeah. It's very assured for a first-time director.
Yeah, I had always assumed he had done other.
DJ, you said didn't your girl? Part of the reason I shot the message out to you is because we were talking the other day, and like literally you just had watched this movie anyway. We're talking about like your girl had just seen it for the first time, right?
Yeah, and she loved it. She was like, "Oh my God, this is like the best I've seen Robert Downey Jr. since Iron Man." For her, she's not seen a lot, but it's a lot of fun to bring this to her attention.
I mean, with Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer, Shane Black finally had actors who, I mean, like he said, it was like he typed it into Downey's mouth. Like, this is the first time that he had actors who spoke the dialogue as it should be spoken. I feel like, even though I like all of the movies that we've talked about so far, and I think they all have their merits. Like, the dialogue in this one in particular, just the delivery of it is absolutely perfect. This is like pure, unfiltered Shane Black. This is not the delivery of it is absolutely perfect. This is like pure, unfiltered Shane Black. This is not Shane Black's script going through a prism of another director's vision, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that was part of the deal. I mean, like he's working with Joel Silver, so like that's the only person he's got to deal with. And I mean, because it's only a $15 million budget, he doesn't have any like studio oversight hardly, because $15 million is chump change to Warner Brothers. Yeah. I mean, the crazy part about Black's story, I mean, maybe this is everybody's story really, but like when you look at something like this, the Joel Silver getting the option on Lethal Weapon originally, and then like him choosing Joel Silver in The Last Boy Scout when he could have made more going with another studio, but he chose Joel Silver because he thought he got him, and Joel Silver's kind of his dude. Then when he bounces back here with a movie, Joel Silver's out again after this movie, and and reconsidering things or just not knowing what to do because of the fact that it doesn't have as much success as he would have liked. It almost makes you wish you could go into the Iron Man stuff a little bit, because it's that like it leads to Robert Downey Jr. getting the job on Iron Man right around this time, that by the time Iron Man 3 rolls around, it's Robert Downey Jr. who reaches out to Shane Black again and says, we need a director and a writer, and I think it should be you. And brings him back into Iron Man 3, which is pulls Shane Black out of it again, basically. Like, I mean, Shane Black after this, just to be clear, like he does not clear, like he goes into a deeper depression than ever before. Now he's blackout drunk. Now he's like fucking up. I mean, there's like a lawsuit at one point where like he got accused by an ex of shooting a gun at her, like hitting the wall or that, for what it's worth. And all of that stuff. But I'm just saying, like, he wasn't, having a fun time like right after this. He ended up having to get himself help, not unlike Robert Downey Jr., who then comes in and bails him out in a sense, like getting him the job.
I think this is Robert Downey Jr. at his best. I mean, this is, and I would say this is Val Kilmer at his second best.
Okay.
It's hard for me to
add Mardigan and Willow.
No.
Willow.
I'm not a fan of Willow. It is hard to top Doc Holliday, but this comes pretty damn close.
Sure. Well, I think we talked a little bit about the influence of stand-up comedy on Shane Black and his writing, and I think Robert Downey Jr. having a background at SNL definitely helped. Not only,
if you want to call that a background SNL, when Rolling Stone Rolling Stone ranked every cast member ever,
Downey Jr. having a background at SNL definitely helped. Not only,
if you want to call that a background SNL, when Rolling Stone Rolling Stone ranked every cast member ever of SNL, Robert Downey Jr. was very bottom of the list.
Sure.
I didn't even know he was ever even on there.
I'll say exposure to great comedic writing and performing at SNL.
Well, I wouldn't even know that because that was at a time as a
trying to make a point, Justin.
As a part-time SNL historian, the year that Robert Downey Jr. was on SNL, that show did so poorly that Lorne Michaels fired the entire staff, every performer, and then the next year completely had all new people.
Wow.
All right. Okay, I stand corrected.
So I don't know if great writing and performance was in his.
What year was
Gary,
this?
let's edit this entire part out. I'm a moron.
No, I think we should leave it in.
Where your performance was in his.
What year was
Gary,
this?
let's edit this entire part out. I'm a moron.
No, I think we should leave it in.
I see where you're going with that. I like
that. This is my penance for missing last week.
I like where your head's going with that, but and Downey absolutely has incredible comedic timing.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no doubt about that. There's a reason he got hired for SNL. It's because he has incredible comedic timing. He really does. And even though he hasn't always been typically known as a comedic actor, but I think the way that he reads the dialogue here, Black's dialogue, did pave the way for the kind of quippiness of his Tony Stark. Because Tony Stark was not a quippy guy in the comics necessarily. At least wasn't pre-Downey.
Right.
But I think that the way that he performs here, because that inspired Jon Favreau to cast him, he played Tony Stark, and very much the movies are very funny. And that started with Tony Stark. And that performance as Tony Stark is he's basically playing Harry.
Now listen, we don't have to go down this whole path, but I will say that I think the Ultimates was out right before Iron Man, right? And
the Ultimates was out right before Iron Man because
I feel like Brian Michael Bendis is responsible for a lot of the quippiness of the MCU. A lot of those movies are clearly taking things from the Ultimate Universe that Brian.
But it's
Michael
also
Bendis
very
created.
possible that Favreau saw the overlap in what Robert Downey was doing here.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like 100% in the Ultimates, Nick Fury is Samuel L. Jackson. They even say it in the story. Like,
oh, I know.
They talk about who would play you in a movie, and they say like he's like Samuel L. Jackson would play me, and like it's
Gary loves stroking Bendis
in the story. Like,
oh, I know.
They talk about who would play you in a movie, and they say like he's like Samuel L. Jackson would play me, and like it's.
Gary loves stroking Bendis. He loves it.
Well, I think he is right about Bendis, but I think
you're not wrong. Yeah,
when Matt Fraction took over writing the relaunch of the regular Invincible Iron Man series, Matt Fraction's writing lends very well to that sort of quippy.
This is not an Iron Man podcast.
I told you we didn't have to go down this rabbit hole. I knew I was going to say it, but I just couldn't let you walk.
And you opened up a Pandora's box into Todd's comic book brain.
Walk over my boy. Even at a movie podcast.
But the plot of this movie is, as we've discussed in all these episodes, incredibly complex. as Shane Black films tend to be.
That's why I called bullshit on that one review. It was like predictable. I was like, fuck you, it's predictable.
Fuck you, predictable. Even when they explain the plot, it's hard.
Yeah.
As Shane Black films tend to be.
That's why I called bullshit on that one review. It was like predictable. I was like, fuck you, it's predictable.
Fuck you, predictable. Even when they explain the plot, it's hard to follow.
Yeah, even as they're figuring it out, you're like, I'm not 100% sure how we got here, but I'm
well, Harry comes in with that dialogue of like, so viewer, have you figured it out? And I feel bad because I'm going, no, I haven't.
100% not Robert Downey Jr. I have not figured it out.
But I think that's fitting because this movie, more than even previous work of Shane Black's, is modeled after those detective novels he grew up on, which often had multiple plots that would kind of weave together. But I do think that because there's not a director or studio that's insisting on turning Shane Black's script into a Hollywood action vehicle, that the plot doesn't get lost in the spectacle. And compared to like Last Boy Scout,
and I just
watch it tonight. You're gonna love it. It's so
watch
good.
it tonight. Literally,
I gotta watch it. But that said, so I can't speak for how this plays against what I'm about to say, but it feels like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is those times we've talked about even on the old show, like when we talk about Eraserhead and David Lynch, or 100 different movies where there's like this is this person's heart on their sleeve, like they're throwing everything about them into a movie. It feels like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is that for Shane Black.
Absolutely.
This is everything he's ever cared about, everything he's ever loved, everything he's experienced. It's like all in this one movie is what it feels like. So the fact that it didn't do well, I can see it.
Well, and also like we kind of alluded to this in previous episodes, especially in The Last Boy Scout, but there
do well, I can see it.
Well, and also like we kind of alluded to this in previous episodes, especially in The Last Boy Scout, but there are elements of previous Shane Black movies that appear here where he's able to direct it and do it the way he wanted to do it. Like like on The Last Boy Scout, the finale of that film takes place on a LA freeway, which is what happened. And they
didn't even think about that. We talked about that.
They changed the entire like last act, but that's what happens here. Michelle Monaghan gets that hero moment in this one that was denied Bruce Willis's wife's character in The Last Boy Scout because they cut it out. They cut that plot out of the movie. Right. So he's doing a lot of stuff that he had written in previous scripts here. Even if once you watch The Nice Guys, Gary, as I watched it last night, I was even struck by the fact that there is the same teenage daughter stowaway bit.
That's what I was going to say.
As I watched it last night, I was even struck by the fact that there is the same teenage daughter stowaway bit.
That's what I was going to say.
In The Last Boy Scout that happens again in The Nice Guys, but is, she gets a lot more involved.
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the Quippy Kid was the one thing I was missing from this one because I was like, he still has the PI. That's like or the weird odd pairing, like the detective or PI guy that gets paired with somebody who's a little more aloof and weird about the way they handle things, and then there's like even the WWE distraction finish where like somebody goes for like they got a gun to you, but you do something stupid that like, or it's not even stupid in this one, but they definitely do it where like Val Kilmer's telling the story about why you stand 5 feet away from the person with the gun on.
Yeah, that's great.
He does something like that in every movie where it's like there's a guy with a gun on the.
This is about like most Shane Black movies, like we've talked about in the last 3 episodes. And this is what I think is fun about exploring like a director's or a writer's career, because you start to see these things pop up over and over, especially someone who writes as personal as Shane Black does. Even though, I mean, obviously these plots are not autobiographical, or he would have lived a fucking crazy life. Right. But
they say on the commentary they're talking about in the scene where Robert Downey Jr. is getting beat up, they're like, is this something you are writing about because as a writer in Hollywood or something, like you got beat up at one of your parties by somebody? And he was like, not exactly the same way. It was at a Denny's. Something like that.
Like most Shane Black scripts, this is about broken people finding each other. In this case, it's Harmony and Harry. And like most Shane Black, about broken people finding each other. In this case, it's Harmony and Harry. And like most Shane Black movies, this is a movie about a fuck up who finds it in himself to not fuck up for just once in his life. Like in the Long Kiss Goodnight, Sam Jackson says, like, just do this one thing right. And that's what Harry's so trying to do in this thing. Like, Harry is a fuck up. He
even gives like a similar speech there outside the apartment buildings. Yeah.
And he screws up his narration when he's narrating the movie and has to go back, has to backtrack. He screws up playing Russian roulette and, murders a guy because of it. He screws up his first date with Harmony because he gets so drunk that he ends up sleeping with her homely friend instead. He's a fuck up, but he's also like a good dude at heart. He might have made some wrong decisions, but like, he's not a bad dude. I mean, even when he's caught stealing at the beginning, he's a fuck up, but he's also like a good dude at heart. He might have made some wrong decisions, but like, he's not a bad dude. I mean, even when he's caught stealing at the beginning of the movie, his intentions are good. He's trying to find a toy for his niece. When he's at the party at the beginning of the film, he calls the dude out for messing with Harmony when she's passed out. Like, his intentions are good. He gets the shit beat out of him for his troubles, but you can see that like his intentions are good, even when like when they have to drop the body, I think he says something like, "I'm sorry, sweetheart, you deserved better."
Yeah, he does.
He's not a bad dude at all. He gets really torn up when he sees the pink-haired girl die in front of him, to a point where he's in a daze and ends up killing the other dude, which, by the way, Shannon Sossaman should not only appear in a movie for 30 seconds, honestly. Like, it's weird to see her in such
Knight's Tale.
Yeah. So weird to see her in such a small role.
This movie's great.
In the end, I mean, once again, like another recurring Shane Black theme, it's a movie about redemption. It's a movie about Harry, who's always been a fuck up. He's a thief. I mean, that's his job. He's never like really done anything right, but he saves the day. Maybe Gay Perry helps, but Gay Perry jumps in front of a bullet for him. But Harry saves the day. Harry saves Harmony because Perry was able to save him. So it's once again about someone finding that redemption and finding those people that they connect with who aren't necessarily like blood relation, which is what all of Shane Black's movies are about.
Yeah, I was bummed when it's been a while since I've seen this movie, so I was kind of disappointed when I couldn't remember what happened to Gay Perry at the end, and so it got me again. I was like, "Fuck!"
When he gets shot,
yeah. And I was like, "Fuck!"
When he gets shot,
yeah. Anyway,
but then Shane Black does that meta thing where he's his commentary on Hollywood, where he has the happy ending and then brings in everyone who's died in the movie plus Abraham Lincoln, and it's great. It's hilarious. I love it.
And I say though too, like, I mean, as far as Gay Perry goes, I mean, I know this was already 2005. Did we say? Is that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, so hopefully society as a whole was far enough along that this shouldn't be a big deal to stand out with. But one of my favorite things, even around this time, probably is that when you're portraying a gay character, there are things Gay does that you can kind of hear it in the way he talks or something, like the stereotypical gay things. But Val Kilmer plays it in a way that, like, Gay Perry's a badass. Gay Perry is like very cool and calm. He talks or something, like the stereotypical gay things. But Val Kilmer plays it in a way that, like, Gay Perry's a badass. Gay Perry is like very cool and calm when Harry is not. And I don't know. I just feel like some other guys, like, I can't picture what Harrison Ford would have done. But
the Gay Perry is really the first time that a black character a Shane Black character has come on, has made it to the big screen, acting and sounding like one of those hard-boiled detectives. Like, he's a badass. Like, Gay Perry's a badass.
Yeah.
The fact that he's gay is just
It's just a part of it's just like a side note.
And there's a lot of jokes at his expense, which I can understand, I guess, if people see that as a negative, but I don't think they ever treat it as derogatory.
I don't think so either. I think
even when Robert Downey Jr., when his character makes like faces,
like that doesn't mean I'm going around dropping. These characters would be this way.
Exactly.
And this is how they would react.
And Gay Perry also gets some of the best dialogue in the movie.
Absolutely.
Oh man, no.
I mean, one of my probably my favorite quote of this movie. It's very hard to pick, but look up idiot in the dictionary. Yes. You know what you'll find?
A picture me?
No, the definition of the word idiot, which you fucking are.
Like I love that.
I immediately saw that this time, and I was like, "Oh, I'm taking that."
That's so good. It's so good.
Two other real quick, if I can, Val Kilmer stories. One is that, speaking of Gay Perry, he says in that scene, he points out where Michelle Monaghan runs up to him after she saves him, basically, or whatever, and they go to hug. I think that's the one. I can't remember where it was now, but he points out where you could see him go in for a kiss, because he's like, oh yeah, I forgot I'm not the middle of nothing. I gave a little bit of this early on, but Val Kilmer also is like, I have a mole on my jaw. And I think everybody's like, yes, Val. And he's just like, well, he's like, right before this, he tells his story. He was like, I was on the movie Alexander, and I had a huge beard, and I had to shave it off, and I cut it open, and I had a huge scab on the mole. And Joel Silver, every time I see him, reminds me how much money he had to spend to digitally remove the scab on my face. and then he's just like sitting there, and he's like, but seriously, try to find it. I'll pay you $500 if you can point it out.
That's hilarious. So, but I mean, I think this is my favorite Shane Black movie. Yeah. I love the Nice Guys, but this one takes the cake just a little bit. And a lot of it's because of the dialogue, and maybe it's because I've seen them. I mean, I think this is my favorite Shane Black movie. Yeah. I love the Nice Guys, but this one takes the cake just a little bit. And a lot of it's because of the dialogue, and maybe it's because I've seen this one more, because I've seen the Nice Guys 3 or 4 times. I've probably seen this one 10 times in the last 15 years since it was released. I loved this movie immediately when I saw it, and I think that people talk about someone like Quentin Tarantino as being like this master writer of dialogue, but I think Shane Black's up there, man. I think his stuff is so clever, and such a, like, his plotting and his character stuff is so good. But then the words that he puts into their mouths, I think, is just what puts it over the top, Well,
just to be honest with you, like, I did not ever think of Shane Black in that way. But what's funny is I don't think we've really hit on that, but like, Tarantino's the person I've thought about this whole month when we've been talking about these. Just like, oh, Shane Black was really Tarantino before Tarantino. Like,
but the thing is, with other directors doing his stuff, it didn't come through as much. Just like in True Romance, also directed by Tony Scott, which is a movie I love, but Tarantino's voice does not come through as much through the prism of Tony Scott as it does when he directs his own dialogue. Right. It's the same thing here. You almost don't appreciate how good it is until he's able to just really let it shine. Do you guys have any favorite quotes or anything from this movie? Do you have any favorite bits of dialogue from
the idiot quotes? Just
the idiot quote's hard to beat, but I do like hey, Gay Perry, still gay? No, I'm eating pussy. I just like the name so much. I get it. I can't get rid of it. And the one where he says, and I don't have the quote in front of me, so I'm paraphrasing, I think, but he says, I don't think you know where to put your food at if you didn't flap your mouth so much. Yes. All of which are Gay Perry quotes. Gay Perry has all my favorite quotes in this movie.
So many good ones.
He's hilarious.
I thought it was funny when he was describing the client that hired him. She opens the door, nothing on but the radio. Really? No, idiot.
It's
I
so
like the badly, like the running joke with badly.
Yeah.
Like,
Bad,
Go,
bad
sleep
versus
badly.
badly. Yeah.
yeah.
Who the fuck taught you grammar? I can spend
Trying
this
to
whole
do the
episode.
him trying to do the math after he kills the guy. 8%.
It's 8%.
Who taught you math?
There's
Yeah,
even, Perry even has
we could
the
spend a
stuff
whole
about,
episode just quoting this movie.
I was about to say Perry even has the stuff about like where he's like, how about you, Harry? Did your father love you? And he says like, sometimes when I used to dress up like a bottle, how about yours? And he's like, well, he used to beat me in Morse code. So it's possible. He never said the words. And he says like, sometimes when I used to dress up like a bottle, how about yours? And he's like, well, he used to beat me in Morse code. So it's possible. He never said the words.
Oh God. The last thing that I'd like to mention about this movie are the opening and closing credit sequence. I love that
very Saul
style.
Bass-esque.
Yeah, I love that because it reminded me of Catch Me If You Can, which is
one
also
of the very Saul Bass
quote unquote incidental Christmas movies that I watch every year. And then what did everybody think of the song Broken, written and performed by Robert Downey Jr. in the closing credit sequence?
That's him. That's him.
That's him.
I know that he put
Jr.
I knew that he had put an album out around this time, but I did not know that was him.
Yeah, I saw the same thing. I didn't realize that he actually had a song on.
Wow,
the
we're
film.
gonna have to play that in the end credits for this podcast. I think
that sounds
this time, but I did not know that was him.
Yeah, I saw the same thing. I didn't realize that he actually had a song on.
Wow,
the
we're
film.
gonna have to play that in the end credits for this podcast. I think
That sounds great.
Wow.
It's gonna be tough for the YouTube. They'll kill us. But I do love that they took a jab at Lord of the Rings at the end too. Like
yes,
we're not going to end it 17 times. Don't worry. But here's the thing. I don't know. There's a lot of really quality stuff in this script. Like it really. That's what I mean. Like it feels like Shade like had all his best stuff, and he was like maybe he had started off. Like maybe if you're starting out and you're like, okay, I can't use all the good shit right off the bat. Like I have to hold back. Like maybe I could get a few jabs in, and then like that'll work for this time. And then I still got more in the tank. But it's like Shane Black's like, fuck this, man. Like I've done this for too long. I'm really
just always approached everything with like, I might not get a chance to do this again. So let's swing for the fences. Let's go for broke. Let's put as much in there. Let's go 100%. And I think in thinking about Shane Black's approach to writing, I just mentioned about him writing the things that interested him and staying true to himself. I think that's a way to go, when you get those opportunities to just go. So, which is why I was in Asheville last week.
Shut your mouth. The other thing I will say too that I really appreciated as just a dude, and we all try to be the best dudes, and even Robert Downey Jr. like saving her in the party where she's like passed out, but also there are the times that he struggles like not staring at her tits. So you're like, okay, this is I don't know.
I mean, I fucking like fell in love with Michelle Monaghan when this movie came out. She's gorgeous for one thing, but she's just really outstanding in this movie. I think she comes across so real. She does not seem like she's playing a part.
Fantastic performance,
which is the best
really
thing you can say about any actor, honestly.
Yeah.
It's weird, dude. Like she in this movie, it amazed me watching it again this time, like how great she is. And she's steady working. It's not like she's obscure. Like, who she is. She's in Mission Impossible, for God's sake. Like, so she's there. It's just like this. She should. It feels like watching this movie, you're like, she should be one of the best, like top known actresses.
She should be bigger than she is. Yeah. Absolutely. But I don't know. As long as it's working for her. But I agree. I think I've always thought she should be a bigger name than she is.
Yeah.
So absolutely. But I don't know. As long as it's working for her. But I agree. I think I've always thought she should be a bigger name than she is.
Yeah.
So Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. This isn't exactly Shane Black's redemption story. It isn't it's almost his comeback story, but not quite. This is more like the match that lit the fire that would be his true comeback, because Gary alluded to this earlier, but after the disappointing returns, the box office returns of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Black got back into partying hard, got back into doing drugs and drinking the night away. And in 2008, he hit rock bottom, and he decided, just like Robert Downey had a few years earlier, that he needed to make some changes in his life. So he emptied his liquor cabinet, poured everything out. He flushed the baggies of Coke down the toilet, and he got his shit together, and he started writing again. He hasn't been in another, got his shit together, and he started writing again. He hasn't been in another relationship since that one that fucked him up after this, after that breakup that Gary talked about, where he was sued by his ex. He just has said that, hey, it's the people who want to hang around me in Hollywood, I just are not someone that I want to spend my life with. He's very untrusting, it seems like. But that dark period in Black's life after the release of this movie is a big reason why it was another 8 years before he had another directing credit. So a couple years after he started getting his shit together, 2010, his phone rings. It was his old friend, Robert Downey Jr., the guy who Black had essentially given a chance to when nobody else would, help get his career back. I mean, it led to his true career resurgence. And Downey I don't know if this was in Downey's mind, but it seemed like he was trying to repay the favor. It seemed like he was trying to give this guy and nobody else wanted to hire him again, because, he finally directed a movie and it didn't make any damn money. And he said to Black answers the phone and he says, I want you to direct an Iron Man movie. And Downey by this time is a huge star. So he's a big deal. He had already done the first Iron Man movie. Iron Man 2 was in the works, and he was the centerpiece of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The dude had a lot of pull. So he was able to talk to like Kevin Feige and the guys at Marvel and get Shane Black the job directing Iron Man 3. And in 2013, Iron Man 3 came out, co-written by and directed by Shane Black. And yes, of course, it's set at Christmas time.
There's a Hollywood Reporter article right before The Nice Guys came out. There was like a profile on Shane Black and his.
I read it. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. But they talk about because of the bomb of this movie.
I read it. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. But they talk about because of the bomb of this movie, like, that it didn't succeed as well as they had hoped. He had done like several other things. He like wrote The Nice Guys, but then it just kind of ended up in development hell.
Well, he actually wrote The Nice Guys around the time that this movie was being shopped around and nobody wanted to buy it. So him and his buddy just started working on The Nice Guys back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. But Downey, like in 2010, calls him and he talks about it. It changed everything. But like Downey says, like, in a quote from him he's like, Shane was one of my lifelines when we were making the first Iron Man. He was like, I would call him and ask about the script, the dialogue, everything in the first Iron Man. And he was like, I think he was just like sitting alone, reading noir novels. He was like, but every piece of advice was invaluable. Like, he was like, I got ideas from Shane Black then. And so they said that, like, by the time that Iron Man 3 rolled around, they talked about what a risk it was, like putting an unknown behind like a $200 million Marvel franchise. But they trusted Downey enough at this point that he suggested Shane Black, and they went with it. And Iron Man 3 goes on to make 1.2 billion worldwide. And it said, in the interview, like, Shane Black's talking, he's like, purists don't like it. He's like, no, I got like literally somebody sent me a meme yesterday.
Probably because of the Mandarin stuff.
Yeah. He's like, I'm getting ass raped by the Mandarin in the thing I got sent. But he's like, but because that worked, then Joel says, he came in, I offered him a drink. Shane said no, he didn't want one. I asked him why not, and he said, you have one drink, the next thing you know, you're in handcuffs. And I thought, I like this guy. He's sharp. So then they got Russell Crowe. And this was all right before the film screened at Cannes, the Cannes Film Festival. And the person in the Hollywood Reporter article, I should follow up on this even more, but they were like, this will be a good coming home party because Kiss Kiss Bang Bang did great at Cannes.
Yeah.
But they were like,
out of competition, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. And they were like, but just to ask if Shane Black was still Shane Black, the reporter goes like, everyone was like, are you going to Cannes? And he said, he turned and looked at him and said, the parties are awesome.
That's great. That's great.
I'm going to Cannes. And he said, he turned and looked at him and said, the parties are awesome.
That's great. That's great. I love Shane Black. And of course he's gone on to do, Predators, The Predator is the one he did, right? And he was attached to a Doc Savage movie for a while, but I think he's dropped off. I think Adam Wingard's actually doing that now. So I don't know what Shane Black's doing next, but hopefully whatever it is, it's set at Christmas time, because Predators was not, and it really threw me off. And
seemed like it would be, but it's cool too. Like you can go back and look at Predators now. And I think anything Shane Black, you can totally see it. I mean, the one thing I loved, like when everybody was shitting on Predators, even
The Predator,
sorry. When everybody was shitting
on
the
Adrian
Predator, is I was like, especially now, like I want to go watch it again just because I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the part that I did like about The Predator because I didn't hate it. It's like, especially now, like I want to go watch it again just because I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the part that I did like about The Predator because I didn't hate it as much as everybody. And the reason is because of those characters.
Right.
And the problem that Shane Black has, so like in The Predator, here is a perfect example. You fall in love with the folks, like the guys in the thing, which makes sense based on the first Predator, like, because you got behind the team. But I've seen Shane Black on multiple occasions talk about, as we've gone through this month, and I've seen interviews that he spends so much time on the protagonist of a film that by the time he gets to a villain, he's like, it's sketch. Like he's like, because I want the protagonist to just be somebody you can get behind, believable, like a real person. And so you could see, like, maybe by the time it gets to all the shit with the Predator, like he's like, oh yeah, I was just trying to like, yeah, but this movie was the Predator. Like that's the bad guy was technically who the
reason people are going to the movie.
right, exactly.
Well, I guess that's it then for our Shane Black series and our Christmas series. Yay. We hope everyone has a lovely Christmas here. We hope that it involves less murder than most of these movies do.
A significantly
like
less
100%, like 100% less.
It's hard to guarantee something like that, Justin.
Yeah,
unless you're like fucking up a crack sale or something like that. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. If you're,
I mean, rehabilitation is better, Gary. We're not encouraging vigilantism on our podcast. I don't think
you're not.
Any of our
not with that attitude,
right?
Next week we're going to be moving along. We're going to I'm sorry. Next week we're taking a week off because it's Christmas. Any of our
not with that attitude,
right?
Next week we're going to be moving along. We're going to I'm sorry. Next week we're taking a week off because it's Christmas.
Yeah, we need a week. How this plays out,
and we need we were taking a week off for the holidays, so we're not going to be here next week. But we'll be back at the first. This is our last episode of 2020. All right, and we are excited to put this year in our rear view.
May all acquaintance be forgot, or something like that.
Those are the words.
I'm going to make a prediction right now. We're recording this early, but I'm going to make a prediction that this will not be the last you hear from us before 2021.
I mean, this is our last official episode.
Yeah, I feel
this
like
is our last official episode. It doesn't mean you won't hear from us. We're out and about.
Feeling.
We're around.
We're all over the place. Fuck around and find out. You know what I'm saying?
But this is our last official episode of 2020. We'll be back the first week of the new year.
We're all over the place. Fuck around and find out. You know what I'm saying?
But this is our last official episode of 2020. We'll be back the first week of the new year, probably January 7th, I think, is the first Thursday of the year, which is the day of the week that we drop our episodes usually. So we'll be back with a brand new series. We're going to spend 7 episodes on our next series. We're going to be doing something that, I don't know, I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a really fun group of films, a really diverse group of films, a bunch of various genres. We're doing a series called 6 Degrees of Kill Bill.
I've been waiting for this one for a while.
Yeah, we talked about Tarantino a little bit on this episode, but Kill Bill is one of my favorite Tarantino movies, and it's kind of the Tarantino movie that is the most blatantly inspired by the films that he loves. So we're going to spend 6 episodes talking about not all the movies that inspired that, because then we'd be turned to your revenge thriller, to your samurai movies and your kung fu movies.
Yeah.
So we're going to spend 6 weeks doing that. And then at the end of the series, we're actually going to talk about Kill Bill 1 and 2 as well.
Awesome.
So it's going to be really fun. We're starting, if you want to go ahead and get a head start on what our next film is going to be for that first week of January, 1967, Death Rides a Horse. We're starting with a spaghetti western. We're just going in chronological order on the movies that we've chosen. Death Rides a Horse is pretty easy to find. As of this recording, it's on Amazon Prime. But it's a pretty easy one to find, so you should be able to search for it, or just hit up cinemashock.net and you'll find links on our episode descriptions of where you can find all of the upcoming films that we're going to talk about.
Sweet. I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be a fun series. It's going to be really fun. Some of these movies I've not seen in many, many years.
You are a movie fan. If you like knowing everything there is to know about a movie, you want to get really detailed and obnoxiously detailed, especially with a through line like Shane Black and all of these Christmas movies. Tell your friends about this show. You're hearing it. Are we not doing even better as Cinema Shock?
Are you not entertained?
Are you not? Yeah, I feel strongly about this. So please share it. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes if you can, because it helps us get in front of more people.
Even if you're not listening on Apple Podcasts, because I know there's a lot of alternative ways to listen to podcasts these days, Spotify and Google and Overcast and all the other apps. But that Apple Podcast rating really does get it in front of more people, like sincerely. So it's very easy to do.
YouTube is also, it was left in my hands, and I promise I'm working on it right now. All the episodes are getting uploaded.
Podcast rating really does get it in front of more people, like sincerely. So it's very easy to do.
YouTube is also, it was left in my hands, and I promise I'm working on it right now. All the episodes are getting uploaded to YouTube, but also extra content like a live show last week that you might have missed. More live shows to come. You guys go to YouTube and search for Cinema Shock. You'll find us and hit us up, because or just on social media profiles, you'll see it. Go find us and subscribe there and like the videos. That would be fantastic. You can hit the bell icon and get notified anytime we go live, any of that stuff. If you're not following us, it's at Cinema Shock at Cinema _Shock. That's the one. Yep. Anyway, I just want to push that if you like what we're doing, it takes a lot of time. It would be really cool if you could tell other people about it. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. It's free
for the folks who are listening.
And masks and
show your love.
Fucking pins. You can pin some shit. Like if you if your nipples are pierced, you can like stick them right through there.
Yeah, you can put our little skull guy on your nipple. That would be great.
There you go.
You want more DJ? Man.
Yeah. Do you want more DJ?
We can get DJ anytime. He's like our bitch. We can get DJ.
Just like a toe. You can get a toe anytime you need one, right?
Everybody loves DJ. Every time DJ comes on, I get messages about, I love that guy's voice. Makes me want to like correct mine, because mine is like the obnoxious, nerdy best friend who just like you put in the friend zone. DJ's is like my name's DJ. I'm very cool and everything I do is great. I hate him for it, but it's the truth.
It's pretty ridiculous, but okay.
If you want to buy that merch that Todd was talking about, head to cinemashock.net, click on the button that says shop. It'll take you to a threadless. If you want to buy that merch that Todd was talking about, head to cinemashock.net, click on the button that says shop. It'll take you to a threadless store where we've got all of that lined up for you. We've got t-shirts with our skull little guy on it. We've got the whole Cinema Shock logo, and we've got ones that say Gary's catchphrase and my catchphrase, and quite unfortunately, Todd's catchphrase.
Johnny has the keys, which has somehow survived this long. It's survived so long that it almost has to be a thing. Although I did get a message, I didn't tell you guys this the other day, but since we're talking about it, I did get a message the other day. I was like, where the fuck's Dean Cundy? And
where the fuck is Dean Cundy? We haven't done any Dean Cundy movies yet.
I know. We got to work back around. People still like that son of a bitch, Dean Cundy.
I mean, he's the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
Fuck yeah, he is. Fuck, like Brett the Hitman Hart of cinema.
He is the Brett the Hitman Hart of cinematography.
That son of a bitch, Dean Cundy.
I mean, he's the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
Fuck yeah, he is. Fuck, like Brett the Hitman Hart of cinema.
He is the Brett the Hitman Hart of cinematography. Dean Cundy, that son of a bitch.
You did it again, Dean.
We'll get back around to Dean Cundy. I can guarantee, because at least one of the series that I have planned in the coming months will definitely feature Mr. Cundy. So
nice.
Don't you worry. He's coming back.
That's one through line we cannot drop is Dean Cundy.
Hey DJ, are you on the you're not even on the internet anywhere? Are you on the internet anywhere where people can follow you?
He's on Twitter, man. He's dropping like bombs left and right.
You are on
Twitter.
Medium. You are on Twitter. I know you've dropped some of your social media stuff.
DJ, listen, seriously, DJ writes some of the most fantastic articles you will read about cinema. If you got to follow him. You got to follow DJ. Tell him where you're at, DJ.
I guess I do
Twitter and Letterboxd. Follow DJ.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
He's got some great insight.
He just did a fantastic article about the fucking Appalachia shit.
The Hillbilly Elegy.
Oh yeah,
still haven't watched that one.
Yeah,
I haven't either. No, I was just like, I'm checking out of this one. I don't even give a shit. I'm gonna watch this like 5 years later when nobody cares anymore.
Gary, where can you be found on the internet for our listeners?
I'm at This Is Gary Horn. It's super easy to find.
I am at Justin_Bishop.
At Mr. Todd A. Davis on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and D&D Beyond.
Still pushing that.
Go buy my slogan T-shirt.
Go buy Todd's slogan T-shirt.
Make Justin, everybody.
Yeah. Go if Todd's slogan T-shirt outsells mine, I'm quitting the show. That's it. I'm done. I'm quitting.
There's like a part of you
that leads to your firing with yourself.
I just want to see you humbled that you have to.
Gary, you hate that catchphrase as much as I do.
I do hate it, but it would be funny to, as the Iron Sheik says, like bid you over and fuck you old world style, humble you.
Anyway, if you do buy any of our merch, tag us, Instagram or Twitter. Yeah, we'll repost you. They look good. The shirts look good. I'm excited about them. So you can follow us at cinema_shock, or that's on Twitter and Instagram. We're also on Facebook, or once again, cinemashock.net, where you can find all of our episodes, all of our show notes, all of our merch, all of everything you want to know about this show is on that website. So until next week, until 2 weeks from now, actually, until week after next.
You won't even miss us. You're going to
until 2 weeks from now, actually, until week after next.
You won't even miss us. You're going to be celebrating Christmas. So
yeah, you got other things to do.
We'll all appreciate the week off. May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
Be excellent to each other.
Johnny has the keys.
DJ,
you can't change it out because there's a fucking shirt.
That's a weird one.
Isn't it?
Keys
Johnny has the keys.
It makes
from Night of the Living Dead.
Yep.
It's not even the best quote from Night of the Living Dead.
No, it's like literally nobody doing trivia. If you were like, this movie features the quote, Johnny has the keys. Nobody on earth would get that, except a listener of this fucking show, I guess.
Yep.
Now, but
we stand apart, guys. We stand apart.
We'll help you win trivia someday if somebody uses this.
Oh, man.
All right. We're out. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.